Today's guest, Bill Geivett, is a former MLB executive, and we go back and talk about his youth days playing baseball, going to college and playing for Jerry Weinstein, and what that was like. We also talk about the difference between college recruiting and scouting, and on today's show, we talk about his path into scouting, his new company, IAMAPLAYER, his book, Do You Want to Work in Baseball, and much, much more.
Welcome to another episode of the Baseball Awakening Podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered, unsexy side of player development. Get ready for some knowledge bombs with your host, Geoff Rottmayer.
Welcome to the Baseball Awakening Podcast. I'm Geoff Rottmayer, and today we sit down with Bill Geivett. Bill, how are you, sir?
Great. How about you, Jeff?
I'm doing great, Bill. You know, I've been a follower of yours since I got your book. Your book, Do You Want to Work in Baseball? And you also caught my attention with your company, IAMAPLAYER. And as I looked you up further, you had a successful executive career in Major League Baseball as well. So I'd like to kind of get into all of that. But let's just start way back in the beginning when you were a young boy, because you had a pretty successful amateur career as well as professional career in baseball. So let's just kind of talk about your youth days and where that led.
Okay, well, it seems like it was in the 40s when I used to play, if you're going to take me back that far, but no, I'm just kidding. No, as a younger kid, I played baseball. That's all I played. My parents wanted me to play one sport, so all I did was they did let me do karate as well. So I did played baseball basically year round, and would do karate at night, especially in the off season. And that's the way it went. I played in high school, and back then it seemed like I can't remember one kid in Sacramento getting a college scholarship when we were playing out there, because a lot of the schools didn't recruit back west. So we all went to Sacramento City College, and we played at Sacramento City, and it was like a baseball factory. Jerry Weinstein was the head coach. Great baseball man, and very, very connected in the baseball world. Is a big league coach now and all that type of stuff. I ended up hiring him a few times.
Nice.
Afterwards, but playing there, I mean, we had 16 players drafted off a junior college team one year when I was there.
Wow.
So it was a factory.
Yeah.
And then from there, got recruited basically all over the country, but went down to UC Santa Barbara. When I saw the beach and the weather and all that, I was in. And ended up playing there and signed with the Angels, and played until I blew out my knee. And then from there, got into college coaching, and thought I was going to be a college coach for the rest of my working career, and was at Loyola Marymount and Long Beach State, the original Dirtbags. Had Jason Giambi and Steve Traxel and a bunch of big leaguers on that team. And then from there, the Yankees came, and I was looking to get out of college baseball because you didn't get to play or practice as much anymore in the fall. And the Yankees called, and I went with them. And I got to tell you, I'm the only man that took a pay cut to go with the New York Yankees.
There you go.
On this planet. The only one. And then from there, after scouting, I was area scout and player development instructor. They'd send me out to coach in the summer with the teams. And then, as it worked out, from there, Montreal called, and they wanted me to be the farm director, and I just kept on getting dragged into the office, kicking and screaming, but I was in the front office basically from there. There were times where I did get out, even as farm director, I'd be out on the road a lot because I like to watch kids play. But other than that, in more like front office type of positions. So
awesome. But you've done it all, Bill. Let's go back to when you were a kid, and you said that your parents let you do karate. I tell kids all the time that karate would be a great activity to pick up for a lot of different reasons. But do you think that it played a role in your development of your athletic ability?
I think so. I think that, the one thing that I talk about in the book is, and they call it the eye test a lot, and you go out and watch players, and you're really, in that eye test is gauging body and athleticism. And that's basically all it is. And level of strength, I should say, as well. So when you're evaluating that and looking for that in a player, that's basically the eye test. So you can see who the players are before a ball's ever in the air.
Right.
And because you can kind of gauge who might fit into being a major league player one day. Those guys are big and strong. They're fast. They're very good athletes that people don't give them credit for. And so you can tell that. So when you're going out and scouting, you're looking for that. Well, karate or any type of other sport, I'll put it to you this way. This is why some people talk about two-way players. They like not two-way players, but two-sport athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of college coaches and professional baseball people will look and say, I like kids that play football too. And I like kids that play basketball or another type of sport. And in this world of now, everybody's just going to play one sport. I think the benefits that I got out of karate were the same thing that you would get out of basketball, football, soccer,
right,
even badminton, that you have to move and adjust and react in any different direction. Those sports are reaction sports, or speed, agility, quickness sports. And that's the thing you don't get being a year-round baseball player. And so if you are going to be a one-sport baseball only, that you better be training your athleticism. And that's the thing I think I got from karate, is I was still training my athleticism. Some guy's trying to kick or punch you. You got to be able to not get kicked or punched. And you got to be able to move and react and think. And think really, really quickly when you're reacting. And that's the thing that I think some people don't get when they think they're just going to invest all their time into baseball. The athleticism part of it, I think, gets missed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The train, if you're going to be at the highest level of competition in baseball, you better be a good athlete, and you better have quick reactions and quick feet. And those are the things that, you definitely gain from these other sports or activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We're in a time where we tend to focus on one sport for, all the reasons that you say. And that's why I'm kind of a pusher for karate for those type of guys. So it was kind of really interesting when you said that. So let's talk now about, playing for Jerry Weinstein. What was that like? This is a very highly respected man in the industry for, all the reasons that he is. But what made Jerry what he is?
Just meticulous about every aspect of the game. I mean, he is probably the best clinician of technique and information about any aspect of baseball. This guy's been studying his entire life. I don't think he does anything else. It's his work, it's his hobby, it's his whatever. That's all he does.
Yeah.
And then he's out running around the country presenting that information to everybody and trying to help them learn from all the stuff he's learned. So he's trying to give back and do it as well. So I get a lot of respect for Jerry, but I think it's just his determination to learn and adjust with the game. I really do. That's the biggest thing for him. So where you get it a little bit, I don't want to say trouble or whatever, but a lot of times as a younger player, you're going, and this guy knows so much, so you get a lot thrown at you in a short amount of time. And that helps you. And it definitely helped me in the long run, but it was a little different early. I'll be honest with you, as a high school player coming into his program, of now I got to, you're going to teach you how to tie your shoes and do this and do that and whatever else. And you're paying attention to a lot of stuff. And it's not just rolling out there and playing a ball game anymore. Over time, those things become second nature to you. But Jerry is really the guy that, for me, was the first one to really ingrain and teach me a lot of aspects of baseball that you just are not going to get in high school or whatever, and even in a lot of college programs. So you're very well prepared to go anywhere and play at any level and operate and know how to operate as a player and how to handle your business and what to do on the field, because Jerry is just so meticulous in training us.
Awesome. So what about his communication style? How did he get everyone to perform at their best?
I think his style was just a lot of communication, a lot of talking. Even in written stuff, we'd have a practice plan available for us to pick up in the morning at 7:15 in his office, so that we knew everywhere to be during the day. And a lot of people do that now, and they'll have one up or whatever. But Jerry was doing this. I mean, I was there in 1982.
Yeah.
And you could still smell those things. I can't even remember what you called it, where they'd run them off on the thing with the wheel and smell the ink. But Jerry would have those out there for us at 7:15. And if you had a 8:00 class, he'd swing by. He wanted everybody to grab one of those practice plans. But also what you would do is you had to go into the office to go get it. So his communication style was one of that there could be a casual encounter because you had to go pick this up.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't think people really understand. When we're that communication style, we were planning Salt River Fields, and I was basically overseeing all the baseball stuff for the big spring training complex in Scottsdale, which is the nicest one, the Rockies share with the Diamondbacks. But in doing that, one of the big focuses for us, because it was so big, was that where are people going to run into each other, and trying to create casual encounters so that there could be communication.
Yeah.
And I think looking back on what Jerry was doing with that practice plan, it was not just that we knew he was communicating to us what was going to happen during the day. It was also one of he got to communicate with us when we came into the office or with one of the assistant coaches, so they could see us in the morning or know who's coming in and getting their practice plan or whatever, but being able to talk to us if there was something. And then every time it seemed like you almost saw him in there. You wouldn't see him all the time, but when you did, he'd always have something to tell you.
Yeah.
So I think he used that as a time away from the field that he could get a message across to you. And then certainly in practice and whatever, there was always an explanation for why we were doing something. And, you felt like you could, for some of us anyway, you felt like you could say something, why are we doing this and whatever, and Jerry would have a response for it.
That's awesome. And I wish there was more of that out there. And there are. There are guys out there doing a great job. But Jerry seemed to have, a very approachable way of teaching the game. And it's cool to see a guy like that is so open and sharing.
Yeah, no, he's, basically my first mentor as far as learning. And I've had a lot along the way, but he's definitely a first mentor and really the first one to go over a lot of the baseball stuff on the field and how you handle the game. He set that foundation for me.
Awesome. So from there you went to the University of California, Santa Barbara. What was that transition like, going from a coach like Jerry and how detailed he was with everything and how particular he was with everything? What was it like going to the next place, University of California, Santa Barbara, knowing that you were probably very well prepared?
It was good. It was good to, when you're studied of how you do every little thing, to then go and have some freedom. And I played for Al Ferrer, who was great in a different way.
Right.
Is he was more of a game type of, very organized and detailed practice wise, but didn't have a lot of, I'd say, limitations on you technique wise as a player. So you get your mechanics of how you hit or how you fielded, whatever. You could kind of do what you wanted. He wanted you to be comfortable there, but he wanted you to execute what he wanted in the game.
Yeah.
So he was more of a game type of manager, real good feel for the game, real good feel for data. And that was my first indoctrination into like statistical analytics, because that was way back then. And we had all kinds of stats and percentages and whatever up on the board for us to know, and where we ranked as it relates to the team and certain aspects of what we were doing. And that was my indoctrination of that. But Al was great in terms of handling the game. Very good feel for the game. I also, during that time, we didn't go to the Cape back then. Nobody went to the Cape because they paid you more in Alaska to go up there and play.
Yeah.
So we would go to Alaska, and all the best college were up there. You run down the list of who was playing for the Alaska Gold Panthers or Anchorage or whatever with us. I'll tell you, our two catchers were Todd Zeal and Chad Kruger, both played in the big leagues.
There you go.
Mark McGuire in Anchorage with Randy Johnson. Barry Bonds played a little bit. He went up for the last couple weeks, and then they brought him up for the last couple weeks, and then to go to Wichita for the NBC tournament, the national tournament. But there's big leaguers all over that league, because they'd get you a job, and the job's paid pretty good. And in the Cape, they got you a job, but it didn't pay as much. So we'd all go up there. And up there, I get to play for Mike Gillespie, who is kind of a cross between Jerry and Al.
Nice.
But an excellent baseball guy. So my foundation now, I go from, Jerry to Al, and then with Coach Gillespie. I don't know how anybody does better than that. And at the end of that Alaska League season, Dave Snow picks me up with Chad Kruger and Bobby Thigpen. I don't know if people remember these names, but and we went to the national tournament because they could add some players from some other teams, and Dave Snow. So I got to play for Dave Snow as well. And I don't know how you beat that,
right? In
terms of a young player coming up and you're playing and learning from these guys. It was great. I knew it at the time too.
Yeah.
We all knew players. You kind of know who can coach and who are the guys, and you know how players are. You always got something to say about somebody,
right? And
we knew who those guys were, and I was very, very fortunate.
That's awesome. That lineup of coaches that you had is special. So now when you go into coaching, having all of this foundation under you from these great coaches, what was your approach like as a coach? Did you try to replicate anyone in particular, or did you take little bits from everyone and develop your own coaching style? What was that like? What was your coaching approach like?
I think you take it a little bit from everybody, and I think I had a diverse foundation of game guys, and Jerry with technique and his meticulous nature, and at the same time the feel for what it felt like to play for Al, where it wasn't as technique oriented. It was more of the game and what that felt like as a player. So I knew that if I could be somewhere in the middle of all of them, that I'd be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
As a coach. And that's really what I tried to do. But my experience of just going through all that and playing and whatever really helped to define how I would be as a coach. And I was definitely a guy in there with the players, and I was doing it for a reason, because I wanted to help players and help them get better. And I was studying, but also knowing that each individual is different. So you kind of react to or treat them how you think their learning style is and what's going to be better in terms of getting information across to them. And that's what a lot of coaches, I don't think, understand. They just are, they're this type of coach, and that's what they do.
Right.
Well, if you're trying to get each player to perform at their best, you got to know how they learn and how they do things.
Right.
I mean, I'll tell you a story. We had Clint Hurdle went over to Texas as a hitting coach. And so Clint calls me and he says, hey, we got this Vladimir Guerrero guy. I know you had him with Montreal. What, how do you think I should deal with him or treat him or do whatever? Because I really don't know him. And we're going to start spring training in a couple of weeks. And I told Clint a few things of how to deal with him that might be a lot different than Clint would ever be. And he called me at the end of the year and he told me, you know what? You nailed it. He goes, this guy, he had a great year. He responded well to me the whole time. It was like he knew me from the beginning and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, yeah. But you don't get that type of insight unless you're really digging in and studying players and trying to learn how to get the best of them as an individual. It's not about you and your coaching style.
Right.
It's about getting to players. So you're going to be different. Some of them are going to want to talk stats and be analytical, and other guys want to keep it simple, and you can't really tell them much, or you're speaking language that's more conceptual than targeted. And that's what you do. You've got to be a chameleon in a lot of ways to get across to players across the spectrum. The players aren't just players, and that's how I deal with them. And in a lot of cases, I see that way too much.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier and it's lazy to just be, I'm this type of coach. And I go out and the players, I need to get players that will fit into that instead of I need to get the best players, and I'll handle each one of them in a different way to collectively form this group that is going to be, what we want it to be.
Nice. I love it. So when you say you were trying to learn how someone learns, what does that process look like?
Well, I think it goes in, certainly a lot of them are visual, auditory, tactile learners. We all got that learning style thing. For me, the big thing was that I would talk first and really want to see who could do what I was telling them. And I'll assure you, I could tell by even the level of student and the GPA, I could probably go down there when I was coaching in college and figure out who I could just talk to and who I couldn't by their GPA. It's very interesting that the kids, you can tell the kids that are good in school are used to taking in information, listening to it, and be able to spit it back out and understand it conceptually as well. And those are the students that are, always at the top of the class that were the opposite of me, Jeff, to tell you the truth. But in any case, and so I would see that. Then you'd see the guys that couldn't really, you could tell them something, maybe be in their technique of hitting and their mechanics or something else to do on the field. And you'd say it, and then I'd watch. And then the kids that weren't quite doing what I said, I knew they were probably guys that I had to grab hold of. No, here's what you do. And I'd move their hands around or move their glove position or do whatever. And then I'd figure in my mind, okay, this kid's probably going to learn better from me moving his body into those positions than me talking to him about those positions. So when I deal with him now, I'm going to talk to him and move his hands or his glove or whatever it is, to put them in the proper spot so that he can see it, right? And it goes back to the old that old teaching model of, they hear it, they forget it, they see it, they remember it, they do it, they learn it. And so that was the whole thing with me, is I had that teaching model kind of in my head, and I would talk to him first, see who could remember it and just do it. And then, show it to them or whatever, and really put their body in the positions, and then make them do it that way. And then hopefully they'd learn it that way. And that type of model went all the way through when I was a farm director. In our workouts and planning our workouts, awesome, and how we're doing our instructional programs, that model was basically the framework of how we did everything. We'd give a lecture part at the beginning, and if we're going to do a drill out there on the field, there would first be a lecture part where we're explaining what we're doing so they hear it. Then we'd go out on the field and actually have a team. Like if we were doing bunt defenses, I would say get the guys that know how to do the bunt defenses and get them out first, and then let everybody see how the bunt defense works correctly or properly. And then we'd run it. So then I know they saw it. So if you're on the side and you really don't know what these bunt defense, how it really works, we'd say, watch your position, and this guy knows what he's doing in this bunt defense. So then they see it. And then after that, then we'd go out and actually do it so they could learn it. And then at the end, we'd wrap it up with a review at the end. I always had some time where the coach could talk to them about the drill and what they were doing to make sure before they took off that we ironed out any issues or questions that they might have. And so it can be, that's what I mean. You can coach any type you want to coach, but you're teaching basically. If you're going to teach, what's your plan for instruction? What's your plan for teaching? You got to know how to teach. And for me, I always just fell back on that model. You see it, or you hear it, you see it, you do it, and then wrap it. I think the review part of it is the big thing as well, of making sure people really understand what you're doing.
Oh man, that's money right there. So part of being a college coach, you had to go out and find guys, recruit guys, which could be similar to scouting guys. Is that correct in your mind?
Well, I'll honestly tell you, when I was recruiting, I didn't know how to scout. Yeah. When I was going out recruiting, until you get involved day-to-day player evaluation, yeah, you don't know how to scout. You really don't know how to evaluate players. You think you do. When I was in college coaching, I thought I was the best baseball guy around. I could go out and find some players. When I went with the Yankees, it was like my world got turned upside down. I didn't know what I was doing. They were telling me to do this, and I'm trying to do that and run this program of how this is how you evaluate players. And I'm looking at it going, I didn't know. In the book, I tell a story about me and Jim Benedict, who's a really good pitching guy now. And Benny and I were two young area scouts, both former college coaches out there. And I tell a story in the book about we looked at each other one day, and Benny goes, I need to ask Lenny if I like this guy. And Lenny was his boss. He goes, I don't even know what I like anymore after trying to figure this out. And it's the truth. When you get in a systematic, programmed way of how to evaluate players, and then once you come out of the transition of going from coach to scout, that's the hard thing. As a coach recruiting, you're going out and you tend to watch a lot of technique. So you tend to, because you're a coach, so you're trained to see technique, you study technique, you're looking at technique, when in actuality, you're trying to gauge future performance is what you should be doing. And yet a lot of college recruiters will get caught up in technique because that's their background. And it's not solely on player evaluation. So, your coach, the coach part of you wants to see the guy play hard, want a gamer, want a baseball guy. And that's what you go out to look for. And if you don't see it, then you might not appreciate what this guy can do, or maybe a little different personality or persona that he gives off playing in a game. But you're not really looking for performance at that point. You're looking at personality. And that's the thing that you get caught up in the here and now a little bit too much when you're looking at younger players, trying to figure out if you want to recruit them. Whereas as a scout and an evaluator, there's no emotion. It's clinical. I'm judging the body, the athlete. I'm projecting out in tools of what I think how hard this guy going to throw someday. What's that breaking ball going to be? Very, very clinical. And not really a lot into technique, unless something's hindering what you think he could do someday. That might be put you in a position to make some type of remark on that. But otherwise, you're going out to study the player and gauge future performance. So if the athleticism, body, potential for strength, how much strength now, then going into the tools of what they can do. So it's a clinical breakdown that you just don't do when you're a college recruit, or very few guys do, I should say, as it relates to putting together a team. And that's the thing of how you look at that team and what you do. In our new company, I'm a player. I had a softball coach, was the only one so far, because I've gone into some university programs will bring me in and I'll give a presentation on how to evaluate players. And I'll have them write up some questions for me of what they want me to talk about. I'll do my presentation, but give me some questions so that I know I'm addressing what your needs are when I come in. And so they'll write these questions out, and invariably they're, how do you scout at shortstop? What do you look for in a catcher? This, that, and the other thing. When I'm telling them, look, let's start where we need to start. And there was one coach in baseball, softball, colleges, as a softball coach, told me, well, Bill, I want to talk about player evaluation with you. Here's the way I do it. I figure out what kind of team I want to build. And I said, wait, stop. You're the first one. You're the first one that started where you're supposed to start. And I said, that's outstanding. So I can tell right now you already know what you're doing as far as player personnel type decision making, a professional player personnel type decision making. They had it because they're starting with, what type of club do I want to build? How do I profile the positions? What's important to me for each one of those positions? Then you can go start worrying about what you want to look for in a shortstop or what you want to look for in a catcher. You got to know what the end game is. And that's what so many people just go out and do that, and then they throw them all together and then try to figure out if they're going to have a good team or not. And so, yeah, maybe you can be lucky and do whatever. Bill Livesey, my old boss at the Yankees, he said it the best. A lot of people can have a good year, but who can repeat success? And, he was basically the architect of getting all those kids in there, whether it was Jeter or Posada or Pettit, Rivera, Bernie, all those guys that had, I think they repeated some success.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between recruiting and scouting. It's much, much.
Receive a Baseball Awakening decal by subscribing on iTunes and leaving an objective review. To claim your decals, screenshot the review and email it to Geoff at baseballawakening.com. That's Geoff at baseballawakening.com, and we'll get that your way.
Yeah, I learned a lot about the scouting part when I read your book, Do You Want to Work in Baseball? which shed real life experience and tell you a lot of things that you would hear otherwise. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk a little bit about the scouting. When you got into that, how many games or how many players does one have to watch to kind of get the hang of evaluating players?
I don't know if there's a magic number. What I think is you just got to understand what plays at the big league level. And so that's the thing. You got to understand, no different than we were talking about with how you build a team or how you scout. You start with what you're trying to build as a team. And it's almost the reverse. You got to understand what players are playing at the big league level, what they look like, how strong they are, and how fast they are, how hard do they throw, and then be able to go down first. The problem that I see in professional baseball and the scouting thing is that I don't think the younger scouts get enough time at the major league level to really watch the level of athleticism and body and strength that's at that level to really understand which young kid can turn into one of them. But you got to know who them are. If you don't know who them are, how can you go out and watch a bunch of high school and college games? And what are you doing to try to figure out who can play there? You need to understand what plays at the big league level first. And that's where, to me, I think a lot of professional teams really don't understand that. They hire somebody that hasn't been at the big league level, never played there, never coached there, hasn't, been involved in that on data. I mean, you'd be better served by saying, you know what, you're just going to watch big league games for a month and just go out there and get all the gun times and watch them run, watch them field, look at the bodies, gauge their athleticism, do all that. And then, you know what? Then you can go out and start watching high school players and try to figure out who can turn into one of that in the future. Get your crystal ball out or your magic 8-ball, whatever you use, and figure out which one of those younger kids fit the profile of a center fielder at the major league level. Has the body and speed and athleticism of defense, eventual defense, I should say, to play at that position. Then you'll really know. But you have to have your bearings. You have to know what's up there. And that, to me, is why scouting has probably done a disservice to a lot of people, because what you end up doing then without that background is scouting for the draft. He's the best player in Southern California, so he's got to be a first-round pick. So I'm going to write a report to reflect that, because the best player in Southern California gets taken in the first round every year for the last 40 years or whatever it was. So that's what I'm saying. When you're going out and you're an amateur scout, you're picking players for the big league club. That's the way you got to think. You're not picking them for the draft. And you're lining them up of who can actually be on our big league field. And I think that gets lost sometimes in all the Baseball America rankings, and this guy's the best one here and there, that nobody really cares, I think, what the rankings are. But I think that constant drumbeat of the draft and where do we have to take them and what do we have to do, what gets lost is how good is he going to be at the big league level? That's what the guys eventually, the scouting director and those guys, figure out. When I believe the area scouts should be thinking like that too. I'm picking our big league club. That's what they got me doing.
Awesome. This is great, so Bill. Man, I can listen to you all day. So can you talk to our listeners a little bit and talk a little bit about the difference between tools and skills?
Yeah, I mean, tools are just the natural, really just gauging their ability level in the present and in the future. So tools are how hard does he throw relative to a big league player. So everything is gauged off. You do a present and future. So if I'm watching a high school kid if I threw him out in Anaheim Stadium or out in Yankee Stadium, would his arm be average, below average, or above average? And that's really gauging the tools. Now, the difference is it might be average right now, but he's a high school player. So I think it's eventually going to be plus at the big league level. So that player would be a present on a 2 to 8 scale, present 5, future 6 in his tools. And that's how you try to gauge him, and hit, run, throw, field power. I think I got them all. And that's what you do. So you put them down in a present grade and a future grade. The one, some of these are objective, right? So if he runs to first and I get a running time, it doesn't matter if he's running that in Yankee Stadium or out on a JV high school field. He fits on the scale where he fits on the scale. If he runs a 4.3 as a right-handed hitter, he's an average runner. Doesn't matter if he's playing JV high school baseball. If we threw him on a big league diamond, he'd run average for the major league level. And that's a 5. And you might say, since he's a freshman and a JV player, that eventually he's going to be a 6 or a 7 in the future grade. But his tool is that. And we have an objective scale for that. They just fit into throwing velocity for a pitcher. What's his fastball velocity? What's your running speed? Those are objective measures. You really don't have to do anything to figure that out. They just fit on the chart. They're very easy to put down. The tools that are harder, and what you start getting into, probably what you're talking about, more of ability, is now where you're trying to gauge a hitter. Well, that same high school freshman playing on the JV team, it's kind of hard. If you threw him up the big leagues, you might not get a hit. So he's well below in terms of hitting now, but what do I think he could be in the future? Because I might like him as a big league player. And what's he going to hit? So these subjective grades are the one. How well is he going to play defense when the game speeds up and all of that? And how well is he going to hit? How much power is he going to have? Those are very subjective, and that's where the scout comes in, where now you're gauging. You've got the tools, so to speak. Well, you have to put down the tools, but ability and what they can do, natural ability, is going to play into how you rate that tool. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's kind of, you're asking me a tough one there, because those are intertwined a little bit.
Awesome, Bill. This is great stuff. When you were a player developer, a director of player development, what is that? What does a director of player development do?
Well, when I was brought in there, I was basically the farm director and the field coordinator. So Dave McAmmer helped in terms of doing a lot of the spring training coordination. I couldn't have done that and been a farm director. You basically oversee all the minor league teams. So from AAA all the way down to even the Latin American Academy, you're involved in that. Not so much on a day-to-day, but you're involved in that, of what players are coming from the academy over to our clubs in the States, or rookie ball. And you basically got it all. So any player moves that happen, if a guy's going to go from AA to AAA, you're the one that decides that, or at least has to okay it. You're also involved in the clubs out of spring training. I mean, you might have 170 players come into spring training, and you got, 125 jobs out there basically. And you got to figure out who's going to be there, who's going to get released from their contract. And you're managing the rosters of all those teams and making sure that you're building those teams, and your instruction in terms of what we're doing with all of our programs, you're overseeing all that. So your strength and conditioning program, your speed and agility, whatever it is in terms of your bunt program and whatever, you got it. And you're the guy in charge. So you have coordinators underneath you that are in charge of each one of those areas. So strength and conditioning coordinator, hitting coordinator, pitching coordinator, those are really the guys. That's the level of, they're the quality control grouping to really make sure that all the direction from the major league club to the farm director is getting handled, and they're designing the programs of how it will get handled in conjunction. If the farm director has the type of ability, enough baseball ability, which you don't see very often anymore, to be able to make sure that these programs are designed the way you want them designed in conjunction with the major league club. And it really works from top down. The major league club has really got to be involved enough to drive the importance of what they want into the minor leagues so that everybody's on the same page. And the minor league guys have got to put their ego aside a little bit and say, okay, we're getting players ready to play for them. Whether we agree with some of these things or not, that's not the issue here. You don't have to agree, but you have to produce players that are going to fit in for them, that they're going to like. That's where our success will be.
Awesome.
And we don't have to agree with it.
Oh.
And so that's the way it's set up. The farm director really handles all that, or if he doesn't have the baseball background enough, which is going on a lot, then they have a coordinator of instruction or a field coordinator who now is his extension of trying to do all that. And so and you have to look at it in a broad, from a farm director standpoint, a broad standpoint. And there are learning progressions and different things that you would do at different levels and handle things different because you're trying to develop a player. It's no different than taking a younger kid and how are we going to develop them into the type of adult you want to see. There's part of that. There's going to be times where they don't do what you want them to do, and you got to understand that and take the best course of action to try to get them on the right track. That could be tough love. That could be hugging them. Either way, you got to find a way to get them better.
Yeah.
So that's a basic kind of structure in a way, with the guys, the manager and the coaches at those individual teams at AAA or whatever, the guys that are really where the rubber meets the road. They're the guys that do all the work, to be honest with you. They're the guys that their kids had a bad outing and he's sitting at his locker at 11:30, 11:45 at night, and everybody's gone, and he's still sitting in his uniform crying, and somebody's got to go over there and talk to him. Those are the guys that do that work. And it's a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of conversations and a lot of hard work out on the field and doing that. But it's a lot of being there for people and trying to help them achieve their dream. And they don't get enough credit in my mind in this thing. Area scouts and managers and coaches in the minor leagues, or everybody wants to look at the big league club and everybody wants to say how these guys are great. And there's some guy out in the backfield today out in spring training, the guy that's really getting it done. He's building the big league club.
Awesome. Man, I can go really deep into some of the questions, but I want to be kind of respectful of your time. So now you have a company called IAMAPLAYER. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what you guys are trying to do?
Okay, well, what we do is, because of a lot of the changes going on in professional baseball, there's a lot of really good scouts that are out there and that know professional baseball, they know college baseball, but they know how to evaluate players. And they know what players need to do to be of higher status to college or professional people. So what they do now is if somebody signs up with us, we'll send a scout out to watch them play. They'll watch that player play, write a full report, give the player and the parents, if they're there, a consultation after the game. Here's what I saw, all realistic and all very clinical. Here's how I evaluate you now. Here's what I see. Here's what I think you need to do to get better or to improve your status with a guy like me. And so finally, a player is put in position to get the answers. So, like, we're going to have a draft in June. And if we go out there today and there's to some college game, there'll be a bunch of scouts there. They're going to watch the game. Then they're going to get up out of their seat, go to the car, and drive away. That player has no idea what they think. And what we do is now we go to the player after the game and tell them what people that are evaluating players think of you. And you typically don't find that out until you figure out where you get drafted. And nobody has any idea, and you hear this, and this scout talked to me, and there's all this confusion going on and this mystery about what's going to happen in the draft. And we take that mystery out, basically, and give you a realistic view of where you're at. Are you in position to get drafted? What do you have to do to get drafted? At the same time, we do it at the high school level, and we'll do the same thing, whether it's for the draft or whether it's for, helping them get on a college recruiting program or college coaches knowing about. And so that's what we do because of being who we are. And, our scouts are full-time guys. They've been full-time guys with major league clubs. So with that built in, they know a lot of the college coaches. So collectively as a group, we know just about all of them across the country. But we're realistic in terms of where we think a high school kid could play. So basically, and what they need to do to get better. So once all that gets coordinated of what the scout thinks, then that goes in, and whether it's me or somebody else, we'll look at the video, and then we'll plan out. They sign up for that type of platform, then we'll plan out and go through with them their routines of what they should be doing to be a better or improved status to upper level evaluators. So you get the answers and you get a game plan of how you can actually do this stuff. If you sign up for us in our college recruiting thing, then we'll help get word out to the programs that in the level that we think you can realistically play, and that those coaches should have you on their radar. And because of, instead of chasing every showcase around, hoping that a college coach is going to see you, first of all, be there, and then we actually alert them and let them know that, hey, here's a guy that you guys should be on.
Nice.
And
nice. That's awesome. I mean,
So, yeah. It's just interesting, though. The people that really gravitate to us are the people that have played at a high level, that understand the process, where I think we have to try to explain what we do in a great detail are the parents that don't have a lot of background in upper level baseball. And they can't connect the dots that, hey, these guys really know. They don't even understand the positions of what I've held or other people have held or a scout to be able to, figure out this stuff. And that's the thing that, we can go out, and it doesn't matter if it's standing behind Nolan Arenado when I worked him out before the draft and watching him or going out. We can basically go out that one time and tell you that's what we've been doing. And we can tell you where you kind of fit and do whatever. In a reasonably, I'll say reasonably accurate way of categorizing you. We don't, we can't say you're going to be the 56th selection in the draft, but we can give you kind of an idea of where you probably fit and what you need to do to get better. That's the thing. There's so many players that you show up to at a game and you wish you could just grab them and say, hey, look, you need to do this. If you do this, you'll increase your value in this draft. And you can't because, and maybe that's part of the coach in me, but you can't because you keep your opinion to yourself because you work for one team. So you can't tell the high school coach, you can't tell anybody because you have your evaluation that basically belongs to and is the property of the major league club that you're working for. And now people have access to that information, to subjective information that's basically all thought of in a standardized way across 30 clubs because they're all scouting for this draft. And that's to have the answers to me is just so powerful for a player. And up level guys that have played at high levels, that's the first thing they said, God, I wish I was around.
Yeah. No, I remember when I first came across your website, I thought to myself, wow, this is great. This is a service that might not be understood, but it's a service that's needed. You know, for the people that are listening, to be able to get this type of information and know for sure what they're thinking and what they're seeing is huge. So now you have a realistic plan.
That's right. And there's not a lot of people that can do this. Your academy coach, he might even play somewhere, but playing is not scouting and making real decisions on it. And it's not doing that. And that's what people don't get to really have a true professional evaluator come out and do it. You know, in this world, every company has scouts, they call them.
Right.
And parents with little background have tough time distinguishing. No, those guys were real scouts. These guys are just calling themselves scouts. That's a difference. There's a big difference there in terms of the study of player evaluation and doing it professionally. And that's your full-time employment. That is a different level. And you know how these decisions are made. And you've worked for a draft, or you've worked for, and then recommended college coaches are calling scouts with major league clubs all the time.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, I'd have people that I know when I was working wherever I was working, you know, call me, hey, guy, was there any way that you can put out to your scouts, we need a pitcher here at this school. Yeah. And I'm really struggling to find a pitcher. So I'm leaving a message to our area scouts. Does anybody have a pitcher that's not going to college somewhere that can pitch at this type of program? So we've been doing this a long time, trying to help the colleges.
Awesome. Yeah, Bill, I think this is great. You know, I appreciate you working hard to put the thing together. So let me ask you, you know, when you guys are out there watching games in today's culture, let's just start with the high school level. What are some of the biggest things that you're seeing that it may be hurting some of these kids today?
Really understanding how they're evaluated, which is no different than when I was playing. I don't think we really understood how we were evaluated. And that's the one thing that I look back on my career. I mean, I spent a lot of time running minor league operations, either overseeing them or in their day-to-day, where I was just a farm director. But even as assistant GM, I'd always have the minor leagues under my watch. And I influence and be working with it on a regular basis. Even if I was with, you know, I'd go to the big league club and I'd go to AAA and I'd go to A-ball and rookie ball and I'd go back to the big leagues. I'd be flying around all over the place doing that. But the one thing I don't think I ever did that I'm kicking myself now is really explain to especially the minor league players of how you're evaluated. And that's the thing we bring to kids now. That if I do a presentation, I'll explain to all the players how you're really evaluated by a professional organization or colleges. Here's how you're evaluated by the position you play and a position profile, and really understanding what's important to you as a player. And people don't understand that. A lot of the stuff that's in my book is directly related to what I talk about out there, and getting players and parents to understand that if you play in the middle of the field, you're evaluated on your defense first. So now that you're going in every time you take a lesson, all you're doing is hitting balls at the top of the cage, working on your launch angle, that you need to understand that they'll never get to your bat if they don't think you can play defense. Because you're not going to be a shortstop. And you think you're going to be a shortstop because that's where you play now, but you're really not in line to be that. And that's the thing that we try to get them to understand of how you're evaluated. Now, what are we going to do to improve your status relative to the position you play? And now that's the one thing that I always wish that I could go back and say, okay, when I'd have a meeting with all the minor league players, I'm going to show you how we look at this. I'm going to show you how you're evaluated. And this is why you might think this, that, and the other thing. Of, you didn't get the opportunity to go to the big leagues. Well, here's how you're evaluated. Now, some of those I would get into individual conversations with players. So I would do it individually, but I never really did it as a collective group.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I should have done. But in any case, I think it's great for players to be able to get that type of info and understanding. Knowledge is power, right? So if you understand what to be doing, and then you're really invested in getting better at the right things. This is a program that's designed to help you improve your status, to help you maximize your potential as a player, to play as high as you can play, because you're going to fit into or plan and your program and routines that are designed to get you as high as you can get, depending on your talent. But at least you're working within the framework, not against it. And there are a lot of players that don't understand why they got released or why it didn't work out or why. Well, you're going to know why, because you'll actually know how you're evaluated and what you have to do to be a guy that they'll like. Simple as that.
Yeah. So then that led you to writing the book. Do you want to work in baseball? So Bill, if I'm a guy and I'm listening to this and I'm saying to myself, man, I really want to hear this guy talk some more. How does one do that? How does one get a hold of you and maybe even see one of these presentations?
I love reading the book. You get that book, Do You Want to Work in Baseball? Be that. And that's got pretty much everything in there that I would be talking in a detailed way. I wrote it as really the impetus of the book. I wanted to write something that is more qualitative than quantitative. There's a lot of quantitative out there. It's just statistical analysis, which I love, by the way. But I felt like there are a lot of lessons that I learned and a lot of things that have stood the test of time and have proven to be of great value, that in baseball people are not real good at documenting all that.
Yeah.
And I learned from, besides what I learned from as a player in college, then I go to Bill Livesey with the Yankees. And Bill Livesey taught me all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you're kidding me. And then you go to Felipe Alou. And then I get a totally different deal, too, with Tommy Lasorda. Man. And all the things that I learned and trying to put all that together in an organized fashion for all of these people now that are out there going to college and they want to be in the front office and they want to be in baseball and they're doing all their stuff to try to line up their academic history and then go and hopefully be able to get an internship or whatever. But they don't have a a lot of baseball background. They don't have the qualitative. They're studying the quantitative. I wanted this book to be a resource for all the analytical stat gurus out there that are going to try to get a job in baseball. I wanted something for them to be able to read so that they have a baseball background, to give them some type of foundation in player evaluation and player development, to understand conceptually what's going on there in a qualitative way. Because I really didn't see anything out there that had anything like this. And from my experiences, I really feel like I was just blessed to be with these people that really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it's, I mean, you can name any one of them. They all played a part in that book. And
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, when I read that, and then now hearing all the guys that you've learned from, man, you know, one can only wish.
Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. So some of it's what I've thought of, and some of it's, a lot of it's what Bill Livesey taught me. There's Jerry in there, and Dave Snow, and Tommy Lasorda, and they're all intermixed in there in terms of things that were remarkable to me to say, wow, you know, these are key points here. These guys are teaching me. And to put that together as a resource for somebody that doesn't have the baseball background, but still wants to be in baseball. And then for the baseball people too. I mean, Clint Hurdle made a comment to me that everybody in baseball should be reading this book, not just people trying to get in.
Absolutely. I agree.
So, yeah, no, so it's been good. And I think that's the way you get more information. I mean, the presentations I do are for college programs that want me to come in and explain all this. I mean, I've thought of doing more of a, I don't want to say podcast thing, but some type of deal like that, or just doing that. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I don't have much time for IAMAPLAYER stuff. These kids keep me busy. But certainly the book is the first part of that. Yeah. And who knows, maybe we'll do, I'll show up to some clinics or something here in the future. But and that'll be on my website, which is InsideBaseballOperations.com. So if we have events or do something, I'll just throw it on there. But right now I have nothing planned. I've been trying to make people aware that I'm a players out there and that they've got some scouts that can really help you in where you're at. So,
man, I really don't want this conversation to end, but, I can listen to you all day, but you got other things to do. So, Bill, I appreciate you coming on, and again, for the people that are listening, the evaluation company that Bill has, IAMAPLAYER, it's going to be IAMAPLAYER.us. And I would also check that out, but I would also check out his book, Do You Want to Play in Baseball? A book that I highly recommend. So Bill, I really appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we can do this again. Thank you, sir.
Oh, that's great, Jeff. Anytime.
I'm Geoff Rottmayer, and thank you for listening to our conversation on the Baseball Awakening podcast. Stay tuned for next week when we bring you another great conversation.